Hello again everyone, Melth here, with a Baldur's Gate 3 guide video, which will tie into my previous guide videos about things like how to get 2 copies of Duke Ravengard's charisma boosting longsword, and how the Mirror of Shar works behind the scenes and the best way to optimize your use of the mirror accordingly. People often ask, what is the highest ability score you can get in Baldur's Gate 3? I especially see this asked a lot about charisma, and with good reason. Ability scores are very important in Baldur's Gate 3, and charisma in particular can be added to a huge number of really important things. For one thing, something like a Hexblade can be adding charisma to damage many times over. You can be adding it from just the basic Hexblade feature to have a hexed weapon. You can add it again from something like the Potent Robe if you're using a cantrip attack. You can add it from things like the Necklace of Elemental Augmentation. You can add it from Arcane Synergy. If you were level 7 Oathbreaker, you could add it from your Aura of Hatred, and on and on and on and on. So many ways to add charisma to damage in particular. Or strength can be added multiple times with things like Tavern Brawler, or the weird quirk on non-honor difficulty where with Titan String Bow and using magical arrows, your strength is added multiple times to damage there, and so on. Ability scores are really powerful, so having a high one is really good. I often see people say the maximum score you can get is 24, and that is completely wrong, except for purposes of the Mirror of Shar. This mirror, the Mirror of Loss in Shar's temple in Baldur's Gate, is the source of a lot of confusion about maximizing ability scores. Both because the way the mirror works is really opaque and weird, and also because the mirror's boosts do work unlike a lot of other ability score boosts in the game. But not entirely unlike them. Let me explain what I mean about that. So, for example, right now, having just used the mirror, my character has 23 charisma, because I got the Patriarch's memory, but not the actual mirror buff. Now, how does that work exactly? I've got the Birthright hat on now, which says it should boost me by +2 charisma up to 22, but here I am at 23. So, the mirror is getting me past that cap that that hat is supposed to be enforcing. Some people have the wrong idea that the order you apply some of those stat boosting items in matters. That, for example, if I had the mirror boost already, and then put on the hat, then the hat wouldn't help me. But that's completely false. You as the player have absolutely zero control over the order those stat boosts and checks about their caps are applied. Doesn't matter what order you do things in, the game seems to be hard-coded as far as I can tell that it always applies stat boosts and checks their caps in a certain fixed order, which basically always works against what we would want. Now, the mirror itself has a cap of 24. For example, here I'm going to give up some stats and get myself the boost that I want to charisma. But it won't take me to 25, it takes me to 24. The mirror is hard capped at 24 with both its generic boost to any stat and also the Patriarch's memory. You can see that the Patriarch's memory boost I used to have on this list is just gone now. If a boost is getting disregarded because of a cap, the game just doesn't list it anymore, essentially. So that's the way it works. If I took off the hat, you would see that apply back on the list again. There we go, Patriarch's memory is back. So what we're seeing here basically is that the order that you acquire the boost in is completely irrelevant. Each boost has its own particular cap, and the game applies them in a fixed order. Now, for this reason, the mirror, which is always applied last, after everything else, is actually completely worthless for optimizing some of your stats. If you actually want to max a character's stats, you might not want to even give them that stat boost at the mirror, because the mirror will be worthless for that stat once you've got other boosts bringing you to or past 24. You might want to instead just boost a generically useful stat like Dexterity, for example, and rely upon other things to get your charisma or your strength up. So, the mirror can't bring you past 24, but what can? Well, a small number of things. So let's get into things stat by stat and talk about what the maximums you can attain are. We'll start with charisma because that's the most popular to max out for pretty good reason of it being possible to add to many things. And then we'll move on through the other stats and get to the very highest one last. One important thing to talk about first of all is that some stats have a different effective maximum you can attain in Act 2 versus in Act 3. And the reason for that relates to this section here in the middle of Wraithwind Town, where there's a secret entrance to the Sharon Sanctuary, where you can get, for one day, a +5 buff to a character's charisma, or intelligence, or wisdom, by praying to one of these statues and passing a saving throw, not an ability check, saving throw, of that stat. So right now, for example, my character has the +5 charisma boost called Dark Lady's Grace from the central statue. That will last until my next long rest. And if you know what you're doing, you can make that be forever, throughout the entirety of Act 2, and just keep that boost while restoring your spell slots in other ways and so forth, if you need to. Very powerful for builds that want to use their charisma a lot. So, you can see that listed here, along with what might be confusingly described as +5 from class there. I don't know why the game writes it this way. It is a very strange system. But basically, when they say +X class, that means a combination of what you picked at level 1, where you can get +2 to one stat, +1 to another stat, and also whatever you pick from ability score increases as you leveled up. So if you started off with a 15, and then at level 1 put your +2 into it, then at level 4 and level 6 fighter, for example, took 2 more ability score increases and boosted your charisma by another 3 points, that would give you a total of +5 class. But as you probably know already, you can't just keep putting ability score increases into the same thing. That is capped at 20. As are the other feats that boost your ability scores, like Resilient, for example. If I click this over here, it'll show my charisma going to 21 over there, but that won't actually happen if I take it. It'll be a complete waste. As you can see, still just 26. The level up screen will lie to you, don't trust it. But there is something that does work due to a bug.
Alright, what now?
Let's go back into that level up menu and pick a different feat that actually will work. The one that works is Actor. It says maximum of 20. It, however, does not actually enforce that. I don't know why, it just kind of coded differently. You can see the interface is a bit different for it too. If we take that, you'll see that I'm now going to be at 27. There we go. Now, of course, having 27 charisma is not actually any more useful than having 26. 26 has the same modifier, which is what actually matters. But what that does mean is that you don't have to have used the charisma hag hair for this purpose. You could have given someone else maybe the dexterity-based hag hair. That's really the use there. You don't need to have both Actor and the hag hair buff on the same character. You can have just one or the other and still get the maximum effective charisma of 26 in Act 2. But of course, Act 2 isn't the whole rest of the game. What can you do in Act 3? Well, the answer is actually also 27 in Act 3. There are a lot of charisma boosting items, most of which don't actually help here. You can see I have the Birthright hat on, for example, but it's not actually appearing on my list. As usual, what we find with these capped ability score increases is that they're always, or almost always I should say, applied in the worst order for us. The ones with the highest cap get applied first, the ones with the lowest cap get applied last, no matter what order you equip the things in, and therefore you can't really benefit from the ones that have a lower cap, which is probably good design if you want things to have a cap like that, of course. Annoying though it might be for us. But there are a lot of uncapped charisma boosts. For example, Duke Ravengard's longsword has no cap. I've got 2 of them here, wielded with the dual wielder feat. So that lets me get a +4 charisma there, which is pretty darn good. I also of course just have 20 to begin with from having had, the initial 15 plus 2 at level 1, ability score increases bringing it up to 20 as I leveled up, then took the Actor feat to get to 21, gave myself the hag here at 22, then I've got the 2 copies of Ravengard's longsword, and then here at the end of Act 3, you get the Spirit of the Land buff, boosting everyone's stats by +1 across the board. So that gets you once again up to 27 charisma. which again is not actually better than 26 charisma, so the effective maximum for all of Act 3 would be 26, which you can thankfully obtain without the Spirit of the Land buff that's only available here at the very end of the game. But what about the other stats? Well, for Dexterity it would be 24. Several ways to reach it, but they'll all get the same result. You could have the Nimble Finger Gloves and be a gnome or disguise as a gnome and then have the Mirror Boost that will bring you up to 24. Or you could here at the end of Act 3 have things going on like the Spirit of the Land boost and Anti-Ethel's Boon and so forth. And if I had put a full +5 into that leveling up, I would also there be at 24. The important thing though is that you just can't get past 24, one way or the other in this case. 24 is the cap on Dexterity. Constitution is the odd one out, you just can't really increase it much. There are not many items that boost it in general, and all the ones that do exist are capped at 20. So the best you can really attain would be 22 with the mirror, or you could just slap on this amulet for 23. So that amulet really is going to give you just unmatched Constitution. Kind of boring, but that's the way it is. What about Intelligence? Well, Intelligence is basically just worse than Charisma. No items exist for it whatsoever. Lots of ways to penalize your Intelligence, tons of ways to do that, almost no ways to boost it. So the maximum you can get in it is 24 in Act 3, which would be, getting up to 20 the normal way. Then you would get the Mirror Boost up to 22, then the Hag Hair to 23, and then here at the very end you get Spirit of the Land up to 24. Would that be worth it? Heck no. It's so much worse than Charisma for every purpose. But that's just the way it is. There is Act 2 to think about though. In Act 2 you can do a lot better on Intelligence. There you can get to 26, and so it is roughly at parity with Charisma. 20, Hag Hair for 1, and then the Shore +5 Intelligence gives you 26. Now, of course, you don't get the Potent Robe for Intelligence, there's no equivalent there, so Intelligence is still just worse in that act where boosting your stats and applying them to damage a lot of times is probably at its most potent. So that's unfortunate, but that is the best you can attain for Intelligence, 26. Wisdom is actually in pretty much the same lousy boat. There is an item, Khalid's Gift, that theoretically boosts your Intelligence, but its cap is a worthless 21. I don't even know why such a thing exists, but that's the way it is. So that won't help you at all, and you basically just end up getting to a maximum of 24, with starting off with 20, then getting the Mirror +2, then getting the Hag Hair, and then getting at the end of the game Spirit of the Land to bring you to 24. Or again in Act 2, you can get to 26, though you really wouldn't want to at all. With Strength, we can actually get to 29. That is the very highest attainable level in a stat. Again, for practical purposes, 28 is what you'd really want, but that's good because 29 is with the Spirit of the Land boost, which is only available at the end of the game. So, how do we do this? Well, there are a ton of items that boost your strength, and they're basically all worthless. What really counts is the Potion of Everlasting Vigor that you get from Araja Blodra, the Blood Merchant, in Moonrise Towers, by giving her a bite from Astarion. And then you can get the Broken Promises potion from the Hag back in Act 1, which gives you until your next long rest +2 strength. I've talked about that before. It's a really good potion. People overlook it. You should definitely use it on every run on someone, whether it's a main character or just a summon. It's uncapped, so it's great. Then there's also the Infernal Legion buff from having all your guys wear these Devil Foil masks. That is uncapped. It doesn't have a listed, clearly explained effect, but you get this thing called Infernal Legion that powers you up by +1 for every other ally wearing a mask, at a cost, of course, of Intelligence, Wisdom, and Charisma. It's another +3 there. We've got Anti-Ethel's Boon, as usual, and then, of course, we have Spirit of the Land. So that brings us to 29. But for pretty much all of Act 3, you could just run around with 28 if you wanted to. Better than Cloud Giant Strength while saving your elixir slot for things like Bloodlust, which is pretty much always better. So, there we have it. Ultimately, the best you can possibly attain in any stat in the game is 29 in Strength. Only doable at the very end of the game, But you could have 28 for pretty much the entirety of Act 3, which is very, very good. Especially given that you can apply strength to damage multiple times over fairly easily. You do have then, as the runner-up, 27 Charisma available in both Act 2 and Act 3 via different paths. And then for every other stat, they are way behind. In Act 3, the best they can ever attain is 24, sometimes even that only at the very end of the game, which is not terribly useful. Intelligence and Wisdom are both at least boostable to 26 in Act 2, which is good. Not as good as Charisma, because Charisma has the potent robe, of course, but good, usable, viable. And then Constitution just kind of sucks, and you can't do anything with it for some reason. But that's okay, that's everyone's second or third favorite stat anyway, so I don't think anyone's too disappointed they can't pump their Constitution above a 23, right? In any case, these builds that stack up modifiers really high that apply them many, many times to damage are very, very strong in Act 2, I would say, which is convenient because that's where the stat boosts are really maximally available. They're not quite so good in Act 3 because they have stiffer competition from things like just using Shadow Blade plus the Resonance Stone, or the Ballless Armor plus any piercing weapon. And at that point, you can apply some Charisma boosts but not others, for example, because if you're using Ravenguard's Longsword, you can't be using a Shadow Blade or a piercing weapon, and so on. So trade-offs there make it so it's not quite as dominant in Act 3 as it was in Act 2. But still very much a viable kind of build, and quite a lot of fun to be slinging out super powerful Eldritch Blasts, or booming blades that apply your charisma damage 4 times over and things like that. Well, hope that is helpful to you. Have fun maxing your stats out. Thank you for watching, everyone. And a special thank you to my Patreon supporters. Keely, MasterKnightDH, Jackie, Enlino, Travis, Andrew Curzon, Truebsy, Oliver, Chronische, Jago, AvocadoSandwich, Gregory, Broken Box, Jenna M, Just Becca, Jack, Newbienna, Nicolas Schmuck, Kostya Nesterovich, Fredrik Bruun, Emperor Kong 420, Robin, Stefan Van Zyl, Edie, Mina, Ali Kasimoglu, Skyler Soss, Nick Myers, Ninjaz, Chupatan, Diabetic Cat, MarvinFang, Max, Afuro Zamurai, Lodestone, Bic Mars, Brad, IJ23, Rodrigo Lopez Dato, The Coding Owl, Silent, Eldritch, Zadira, Nicholas Halden, Michael Meineke, Joe, Michael Piccone, Cosima, and Eduardo. Have a great day, everyone.